On today's episode of PathMug Presents, I've got a very special guest with me joining here today. Please welcome Timothy McCormack, who's the VP over at Bigeye. So for all of you who don't know, Bigeye is an agency that is strategy-led, full-service creative agency that are building brands globally. They're powered by actionable, in-depth consumer research, and they establish and scale the disruptive brands for tomorrow. Tim, it's an honor to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely. So for all of our listeners out there who don't know about your agency, tell us what Bigeye does and, who your clients are and what are the problems that you ultimately solve for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bigeye, as you mentioned, is a strategy, consumer research-led, full-service agency. But I want to take a minute just to kind of unpack a little bit of what that means, because I think it's really important figuring out kind of what makes us unique in the agency space. And what is really important there is the consumer research strategy-led piece. So we truly believe that the most important thing in any kind of marketing is having an in-depth understanding of who your audience is. And so we have taken kind of that approach being our heartbeat. It's something you hear a lot, but something that we actually have trademarked and is really key to us, but reaching the right people in the right place at the right time. And we get that from having an in-house consumer research team that is always running qualitative, quantitative studies to help us understand and figure out, exactly who that audience persona is, what makes them different, how we can build addressable segments for media for them, what kind of creative and messaging is going to resonate most with them. We tend to take all of that and even before a campaign starts, kind of have a really strong database strategy to build that out. And so I think that's kind of the key thing for us.
Sweet, incredible. Tim, thank you so much for giving me a brief overview and going really into the weeds of what Bigeye does overall. So in terms of your clients, how do they find you? Is it mainly through, digital marketing, inbound SEO? Which is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is pretty heavily based on SEO and our website. We've taken a lot of time to kind of continually iterate better and better website pages, website content, user experience flows. We're constantly building out new case studies. And I think for an agency in particular, that's just an essential part of the step. I don't think anyone starts working with an agency without having combed through their website pretty heavily first. And we know from our website analytics, that's true of mostly all of our leads. We see people they've visited 3 times, they viewed, 35 pages over those visits. So I do think that's really been a key part of the consumer journey for our clients.
Sweet, that's incredible. So now that you mentioned about the website, that's actually my next question. And I feel like you've already answered it for me, which is, what is the main strength of your website? So would you say that is the main strength as you just discussed, or is there another strength about your website as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I will say a big shout out to our design team. The website is beautiful. It renders beautifully on desktop or mobile. It's fast. But one of the things that, from my purview is a real strength of the website is kind of that continually iterative design, the UX experience, where we've really thought through and worked out what are the best journeys through the site and what are the touch points that are most important for us to kind of give clear calls to action for on each page. We know that that's not always going to be contact us. Sometimes it's going to be driving people further into the site. Sometimes it's going to be providing them with relevant case study experience. Sometimes it's going to be providing them with, fast hitting, newsworthy blogs. So we've really tried to think through what that user experience looks like based on data and website analytics so that we have that clear picture. And to me, that's one of the real strengths of the website.
Sweet. That's incredible. And, I looked at your guys' website before this interview. It is beautiful. You can tell so much time was had gone into the website, the way it's designed. It's incredible. So I really love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about the strength now. So what would you say would be an area of improvement on your company's website?
Yeah, to me, there's two, and it's not that the site now is bad at either of them. I actually think it's still fairly good. I mentioned one, actually, I think I mentioned both of them in my previous answer. It's just that they are areas of constant improvement, and that is page speed. So, certainly people are demanding content faster and faster. Yeah. We used to see if we were at about 3 seconds average page load time that we would have great bounce rates. Now we're starting to see that trend closer to 2.5. And of course, that's kind of continually a challenge when you want to have a really beautiful design site with images, with video. So that's something that we're always constantly working on. The other thing that we kind of always have to be constantly working on is new content, especially for us, case studies. And this is true for all of our clients too, where even if it's something that we're doing well, it's still an area that we see needs almost constant shoring up. SEO really almost demands fresh content, but also just the world we live in today. Things change so quickly. A year ago, there wasn't hardly any content coming out about generative AI. Now, almost regardless of what industry you're in, it's important to have an opinion on it, and certainly in the advertising industry. So I think things like that make it just imperative that you are always thinking about what are the pieces of content, what are the topics, what are the themes that are resonating and matter to your consumer.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love the way you summed it up as well, because especially with being in advertising, you always have to have your hand on the pulse, knowing where trends are going to go, staying on top of it, and, being the leader in those areas, letting the audience know, hey, this is where we're seeing trends going. These are things to keep your eye out for. So I totally agree with you.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So now we're going to talk about you as a leader. So what does an average day look like for you?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. There's not many average days, but there are some things that are true across the board. So one of the things I think that's great about our agency is we start each morning with a standing production meeting right at 9:00. So the first thing we do is get in, look at what we've been working on, look at what we have coming up, and communicate about, what we need, what we're missing, any roadblocks or impediments. I think that kind of communication is essential for an organization. And I think it's really key to do it in the morning because it kind of sets the tone, builds things for the rest of the day. We also now, the number of these meetings depends on what day it is, but we also always have internal meetings for each of our clients to kind of talk cross-department about what we're seeing, what's going on, where performance is, what do we need. So those two types of meetings are really key and essential. I do think it's great. We have not just myself, but the rest of our vice presidents, department heads, in those meetings, they're not, kind of just tactical only. We do try and look at them fully strategic, big picture. Outside of that is where there's a lot of kind of room for movement in my schedule. But some really key things that we look at pretty much every day, or that I jump into pretty much every day. Google Analytics. We really live in Google Analytics. Looking at website performance, looking at website trends. We also, are pretty consistently looking at Campaign Manager 360, which is our media analytics kind of source of truth, because I really tend to look at every day as an opportunity. We'll have a campaign or a website that our client is looking for us to improve, And what I try and do is jump in and look at the data, look at our consumer data, look at the website data, look at the media data, and put it together like a puzzle to understand what are the levers we can pull to drive optimizations. What are the pieces that are fitting well that we can iterate off of? What are the pieces that probably are a little jagged that we can smooth out? And one of the things I really love about my job is that, it's a puzzle that continually kind of gets harder. The more you optimize, right, the next day or the next week, when you're looking at the same puzzle, you're going to have one less low-hanging fruit to go after, right? Yeah. So I really enjoy that kind of consistently ratcheting up challenge.
Sweet. That's awesome. And I love how with seeing those challenges, it motivates you to, to think in the sense of, okay, how do I be strategic, but how do I figure out this next goal that I want to meet, especially with, managing Google Analytics. A lot of people are quite intimidated with that tool because they don't have knowledge of, even with Google Tag Manager. So I think it's great that you have so much knowledge and depth about the tool to where you've been able to use it for your advantage and being able to really see, what the benefits are overall. So that's great.
Yeah, it really is indispensable. Like I said, we're very strategy and data focused. I mentioned consumer being a huge part of that. And for our strategy team, it really is. For our media and analytics team, which is what I oversee, we are really heavily trying to marry the insights that they are giving us and the personas that they are giving us to actionable, addressable items on the sites in our media campaigns. And so for us, the really, really key tools that kind of allow for so much of this to bloom is Google Analytics, because it gives us such a clear picture of, what those user behaviors are in the places where they, matter most. So for most, not all of our clients, but for most of our clients, the action that we're looking to drive is a website action. We work with a lot of finance clients, so banks and credit unions. And these days in banking, right, the website is for the most part the branch location for so many people. So you have to be winning on the website to be able to drive new account openings, to be able to drive people who have existing accounts to cross-sell other financial products. Even things like mortgages, where we probably don't tend to think of them as a very online driven thing. We find that, a process of advertising to a squeeze landing page with specific benefits that match the ads, and gathering not everything, but just a short lead, a kind of request for information piece. And then monitoring them as they go through an email inbound marketing program has been hugely successful for driving mortgages, even as we've seen rates increase. So really interesting and really key to kind of everything is understanding what those touch points are.
Sweet, that's incredible. And I love how you summed it up, the importance of understanding those touch points, overall in general, and it's great knowledge for our marketers. So with that being said, we're coming to the end of our interview, and I want to thank you so much for taking time to join us on Pathmark Presents today, but I also want to give you the last word. If someone were to forget about everything we've talked about here in this interview today, what is one thing you want them to remember about Bigeye Agency overall?
Yeah, I would say, and it's actually on the screen next to me, reaching the right people in the right place in the right time is just so key. I think it's one of those maxims that we almost kind of forget because we hear it so often. But there's so much truth to it, and it's about taking the time to really define what those are and understand where people are not in the right place at the right time or are not the right people, and continually winnowing it down until you have this really great path.
Amazing. You summed it up perfectly. Thank you so much again for being with us on PathMonk Presents. And for all of our listeners, check us out next week on PathMonk Presents.